Hey Honest community, before we dive into this episode, we've got a quick free favour to ask. If you enjoyed the Honest Property podcast, please hit like, follow and subscribe wherever you're listening from. It helps us grow, reach more people and bring on guests that you want to hear from. Thanks for being a part of this. We appreciate you more than you know.
Hello and welcome to the Honest Property podcast with your hosts Becky and Ruth, and we love to talk about all things holistic business, property investing, and today we have Abbie. Abbie's Healing Corner on Instagram, isn't it? And what's your other property page?
Legacy Property Collective.
That's it, Legacy Property Collective. And Abbie, we actually met on social media, really connected with. She is amazing. She is amazing, and just felt like a word we'd want to discuss today on our podcast is soft girl life.
I think you were the one who mentioned it first and we were like, yes. This is a term that
we resonate with a lot in our 30s because we were not that in our 20s. And your story, I think, is just, I've heard bits of your story that you've posted online and really can empathize so much with your whole journey, that everything that you've been through. And I feel that this is something that's really important to let other people know who've gone through this or they're going through this now. And the reason why soft girl life, for us especially, is such a word that we really, really want to hone. Is that the right word? Hone into.
I think it's such a is that the right term? Juxtaposition of like what it means to be in property and an investor, and then, you know, just to use it as a tool to live your best life. And Abbie is a wonderful example of that. So thank you so much for being on this episode, Abbie.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
So where do we begin? How did this all come about?
Shall I start with the property stuff first, or shall I start with the healing stuff first? That's all interlinked, so it doesn't really matter where I begin.
Start with the property. Why not? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I've been in property, I guess, sort of unofficially since about 2017, officially since 2020, and basically bought a vanilla buy-to-let, you know, didn't need much work, just sort of a flat down in Dorset. And it really was just with the intention of getting on the ladder, not really with anything else in mind. And at the time I was overseas, so I was just thinking, oh, it'd be good to have something, you know, so I don't kind of miss out on that step. And then basically last year, sort of going through all my soft girl life, or going from the hard to the soft life, let's put it that way, I basically just started looking at property and thinking like, hey, you know, what am I doing with this mortgage-free property when I could actually take those funds and start growing a portfolio very much in line with the life that I'm creating now. So sort of building a business that is freedom first and, you know, actually creating a cash flow that can mean that, you know, if I don't have many clients or I want to take a break, like I still have income coming in. So I guess that's sort of the evolvement of my property journey. And right now, I'm building my portfolio through the BRR model, so the buy, refurbish, refinance model. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I love it. It sounds like you were very focused on your values of why you're doing property in the beginning, in the first place, which is kind of unusual actually, because people are told to say what their why is before they start something, but it comes with a lot of uncertainty and then they don't maintain those values throughout. And then Ruth and I were just saying earlier how we ended up doing this, that, trying lots of different
because
things.
That's what we thought we needed to do.
And lost sight of why we were doing it in the first place. But have you always just done BRRs?
Yes, I mean, so far I did sort of dabble with the possibility of going into rent to rent, but sort of, you know, rent to, you know, serviced accommodation, but I just realized how much work it was going to be basically. And at the moment it's BRR sort of buy to lets. I mean, maybe I'll do some social housing stuff in the future. I'm sort of really intrigued by sort of the social impact stuff as well. But, you know, the buy to let, obviously, you know, if you have an agent to manage it, you know, once it's up and running, there isn't really that much you need to do. Like with my existing property, there's a couple of emails, there's a couple of bills to pay, which at the moment I do myself, but it's the sort of thing you could easily pass on to a VA or something in the future.
I love that you've maintained your focus
Yeah.
because we didn't. Learn from Abbie. Save yourself the stress. If you can, I think Ruth and I completely vouch for what you've done. And if we were to do it all again, we would have kept our eye on. I mean, you can't regret everything the things you've learned having made mistakes. Oh, they're not even mistakes if you've learned from them, are they?
I was going to say that actually by doing all, I think going further away from why we got into property in the first place, as actually, what's the word? It birthed Honest Property Sisters, and it's connected us with people like you. And I'm so great. You know, the silver lining is I'm so grateful that we've been able to connect this way because of all the lessons we did learn. Otherwise, we never would have met you, and we would have met other people who also are striving for the same thing. And when we first started our journey, we didn't have that kind of community who also wanted that. It was very much scale, scale, scale in a very masculine way that just didn't create the life that we were striving for, but that was always role modeled. And now there is a huge huge space for other people that are like us, who are using property as a tool for a lot more than just building a massive property portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, in addition to that, I think it's also about, for me, it's also about building a legacy. It's about sort of breaking sort of generational wealth cycles. Like, I grew up in a middle class background, like very, privileged in a way, but my father grew up in poverty, and obviously he broke some cycles and sort of, I'm getting shivers here, but, bringing me and my sister up in that way. And I'm hoping I can kind of take that one step further. So I don't know if my son decides to want to go to university, or if we have any future kids, then I can be like, okay, I can give you the income off this property, or when they turn 18, I'll make you a shareholder, so that, that generational wealth can be kind of built in the future, because I think it just gives you so much choice. And I was actually speaking to Keely, who I think is going to be on your podcast soon, Keely Vuong-White, who's amazing on my marketing. And I was realizing that one of my values is actually freedom to choose. And that's what it feels, what feels really aligned. It's about the freedom to choose where you want to live, the freedom to choose how you want to spend your time, the freedom to choose, where, what you want to do with your finances, and not having to necessarily worry about the day to day. And, I'm hoping that I can kind of create that also with my portfolio, not only for myself, but for generations to come too.
I love that. Yeah. It's maintaining your values, making sure you're aligned, and you are very much with the guidance of Keely, as well as all your own work on yourself, making sure that you're walking your own path. And I think that's really, really something that we've been talking about a lot recently.
Is that why you got into coaching as well with your business?
So I think
I'd love to hear a little bit more about that too.
Yeah. So the coaching, I guess, sort of brings us on to the other side. So sort of, I guess, this transformation from, living the hard way to living the soft way. So I was essentially, quite, I don't want to call myself a high flyer, but, I was very much into hustle mode. I worked all the hours that were given. I basically, my whole worth was essentially based on this sort of high level successful career. And in 2018, I basically burnt out, got like a post-traumatic stress diagnosis from like a recent trauma. And then I also really badly injured myself and developed like a chronic pain disorder called complex regional pain syndrome. And I was basically kind of told, like, you might lose your ability to walk. You might lose the possibility of being able to walk. And it was just like this huge wake up call. Like, what have I been doing with my life? Like, just almost throwing it away to, the success of a career, which was a very valuable career. I worked in the third sector. I worked in the international development space. It was very rewarding, but at what price? And, that basically just shifted everything around for me. And, I realized that I was not very happy. I was really stressed. And essentially, I was this person that used to, be burning the midnight oil, replying to emails really late at night, waking up, without even brushing my teeth or getting out of bed, I was replying to emails and setting up meetings and things like that. So it took a lot of work, sort of physical and mental work, to kind of heal, including sort of believing in my ability to heal. And I actually worked with a coach myself to kind of get better, as well as, embracing the medical world. And that's ultimately what has sort of brought me to coaching, because I basically left that old career, this decade-long career in international development, and retrained as a yoga teacher, because it was really pivotal for my journey, my healing journey, as well as a meditation guide. And then I sort of have slowly sort of transitioned over to coaching now, and then I'm training to be a therapist too. So yeah, it just changed everything.
That's amazing.
Wow.
That's crazy. So when was property happening alongside all this, all this transformation?
So the first property, it would have happened just before that, because the reason I was able to buy this initial property was because I had been hustling, right? And I actually bought it whilst I was on a career break. It's quite laughable when I think about it now.
Do you know where that pattern came from? Is that quite a personal question to ask? Because we've been prone to your mental health.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect question to ask. I mean, I think I definitely resonate with what you're saying. I mean, my parents were teachers. They're really, really hardworking. There was not a lot of space for rest or self-care, and things like that. And then obviously on top of that, society makes you think the only way you can be successful is, by having, a nice 9-to-5 job and giving back and paying off your mortgage and all the things. So I think there's the societal element, as well as, I guess, the environmental element and what's like modeled. And then I think on top of that, I think I just always was striving to be someone that was hardworking, that kind of thing, which then just fed into these perfectionist tendencies. I like to call myself a recovering perfectionist these days, because those patterns do, of course, sort of creep up from time to time. But there was just a lot of inner work. Like, I basically had to learn what boundaries were. I had to learn what self-care was. And, spoiler alert, it's not bubble baths, as a lot of people think. And then I also, had to learn how to embrace rest. I think at the time I didn't know what rest was. I would kind of busy myself at work. If I wasn't at work, I'd be out doing things. Like, I just didn't have any space for anything else, and then just wonder why I was overwhelmed and stressed. There's a quote I absolutely love, if there is anyone listening that kind of struggles with this thing of, like the rest versus work. And it goes like, rather than asking yourself if you've worked enough to deserve rest, ask yourself if you have rested enough to do your best work.
Yes.
Yeah, we had to learn that. I think that's such an important quote.
Do you know what is really kind of, I'm laughing, but it's kind of sad. That the people, like the wonderful people, like that we've connected with, like yourself, Abbie, like we're so glad we're connected, but the sad reality is we've all suffered a burnout in order to reach this point. And I feel like we're just all trying our best to try and not like share the message and be like, can you, like, it would be great if we could help someone else save themselves from not getting to that point before they suffer.
Oh no, I was just going to say that I also read this other quote, which is true, that it's, I've never seen a rested woman, I think was the one, something that I had to think about and go, oh yeah, that's true. I don't think I've ever seen women in my life, like from a women's perspective, actually rest. They're always busy, always doing something for the community, something for the family, something for society, and they're also working. And there's always something productive to do, was I always saw modeled.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that even shows up in motherhood as well. Like the fact that, the village is no longer inexistent, let's put it that way, or it doesn't exist in the same way. And, there's a lot of shame for people that do ask for support. I'm very lucky. We when we were in Senegal, we have a nanny, and, like that is obviously a luxury. It's a real privilege to be able to afford that. But, like people, we are so worthy of having that support. And I think often as mothers, it can be easy to forget that, it's kind of, the hard way is what you see, the hard way is modeled, and you almost start believing that it's meant to be hard. And I think that's the other thing with the, with the soft life, is also thinking about like, how could this be easier? Like, what if I could embrace ease in this moment? Do I need to engage with that kind of stuff? Or like, what would make me breathe deeper if I'm trying to make a decision about something? So sort of trying to almost hardwire, like sort of rewire your brain to start looking to do those things rather than just doing what is, I guess, the done thing. And I think it also takes a lot to kind of, I really admire you both and a lot of people in the community that have, managed to see the shift and move out of that pattern, because I think it really takes a lot, to embrace, softness and doing things differently in a world that glorifies hustle. And then even more so when you're actually engaging in the property world, people only really care about the numbers and, how many things have been done, again, at the expense of everything else. It's almost like, I'll rest later. I need to put in the hard grind now. Whereas, what if there can be a different way? What if you can have both?
Yeah, I love that you're part of spreading this message that we will come together. Do you find that, because you're based, you've lived internationally. You've mentioned that you lived in Kenya and now you live in Senegal. Do you find that you're able to embrace your soft girl life easier in those places?
In some ways, yes. I mean,
It's just different.
At the moment I live between the UK and Senegal, and obviously there are some things that are easier here, and then there are other things that are easier in the UK. But I also think that it isn't necessarily the answer because I think, the grass is always greener is what gets thrown around. And, if you're in Senegal, you'll be like, okay, yeah, the weather's great and I've got X, Y, and Z, but these things are missing. And I think for me, it's all about sort of embracing where you are now. And I think it might just look different, what you would need to put in place in the UK versus somewhere like Senegal, or elsewhere in the world. I think it's more just, it would just depend on your setup, I guess, similar to, the property business having systems. What systems do you need to put in place to actually make the soft life happen no matter where you are?
Yes, and you have been full of great tips in our coffee catch-ups about how you've gone and managed your portfolio from Africa. Wow. So what are your top suggestions if because like us, we also want to do this for more time and location freedom. So what are your top tips to set up and automate and systemize everything so that you can create your soft girl life abroad?
Hey guys, if you're new to property investing, we know exactly how hard it is to figure out where to start. That's why we created the Beginner's Roadmap. It's your guide to mastering the fundamentals so that you can move forward with clarity and confidence. Plus, you'll gain access to our free community for ongoing support. Just hit the link in the show notes. Now, let's jump back into this episode.
So I think the first thing is to, have someone find people to do your viewings for you. So you can use, there's a website called Viewber where you can actually just recruit anyone. But I use a different route, which is actually finding people that are already in the property space, whether they work for Viewber and are doing this already, or whether they actually have their own portfolio and are just looking for sort of some extra cash on the side. So I find people that, already know the property space. I've got 3 different people, I think, at the moment. Obviously, I'd hope to grow that more in the future. But yeah, getting somebody to do your viewings, I think that's top. And then having like a system in place for that. So, like actually having the same, sheet of information that you give to everyone. So then you can make sure that you actually get the same information back. So there isn't like varying, some people won't send videos or some people won't send photos. Like you won't have that if you have like a set plan in place, if you see what I mean. So I'd say that's the top tip. The second tip I think that's really important is making sure that you can still use your UK phone number. Obviously, if you're in Europe, it might be different, But for example, in Senegal, or I know in Asia, you might be paying £1.50 a minute just to be able to receive or make a call. It's just not doable. So I use the number people. I have purchased a virtual phone number for them, and then I have it routed through Softphone, which is like an app. So that allows you to have a virtual number. So not only does that mean that cost-wise, it's much, much better. I think I now pay for a subscription, which is like maybe £10 a month or something like that, because I'm making a lot of calls. But on top of that, it also looks like, that they're not getting an international number calling through, because some businesses in the UK might block those numbers, or they might not answer it if it's coming from, a foreign number. So I think it really does help also in terms of like connecting with estate agents as well, sort of both practically and also just that, obviously from a cost saving point. So those I'd say were my top tips. Probably have more, but
Yeah, they were great tips. Really, really useful. Because I think that is true. I mean, if I was I tend to ignore numbers that I'm a bit suspicious of. Is this going to be a sales call for something? Whereas if it looks like, it's like a local number, then I'm way more inclined to pick up.
I have a question actually, just to play a bit of devil's advocate, of like how is it even possible to have a soft girl life if because like how can you be successful in soft girl era if it's been drilled that the hustle way when you start work is like the only way in certain industries? So how, like, if you are living a soft girl life, how does that show that like you can be successful doing that as well, and it's not that you're not what's the word I'm trying to say,
But you're still being
that you're still driven at the same time, I think sometimes if I hear soft girl, like, I love it. I absolutely love it. I will embody it. But for someone who
else
will
might see it
as like you're lazy.
So how do you define, make the difference?
It's a really good question. I mean, firstly, I think that soft sort of doesn't mean that it's not hard, because I think there's a lot of being soft that also requires you to do hard things, like put boundaries in place and really protect your time and things like that. So I think, it's not all about softness. But I think in terms of your question, I mean, I guess, I'm an Aquarius sun, so I'm not afraid to do things differently. So I guess that also helps me kind of step into that. But I would argue that there are different, there's no one set formula in the property world. You have people that are completely hands off and maybe are working through sources. They don't even see the property. They're not even involved in the property. They just pay somebody a fee and they get it done. And then obviously you have people that are super hands on, that are, maybe doing all the viewings, all the number crunching, everything like that. And I feel like there's no one way that works for everyone. And I think you've got to like find what works for you. And, like if you want to be the one doing the viewings, great, go for it. If you would rather send somebody to the viewings so you can spend some time with your family, or like I do sometimes, go to the beach, do it. And I think you will find your people. So actually, I posted a reel the other day about me being at the beach, and while somebody did a viewing for me, and one of my associates saw it, and I was like, oh God, but for her, she was like, great, this is great advertisement for me, because if I can enable people to do other things, like that's why I'm doing this. So I think it also is about finding your people and maybe challenging anyone, if it feels comfortable and safe to do so, that, start saying, oh, you're lazy or whatever, I don't know. I feel like it's not probably a discussion I would probably want to go into, to be honest. I think if somebody had that perception of me, I'd probably go with the Mel Robbins, let them theory, let them. It's fine if they think that, because I know I'm not lazy. I am running 2 businesses. I am training to be a therapist. I'm a mum. Like, priorities are different in this season. And I think that's also really important to remind yourself of. And, just because it has been done the hard way, it doesn't mean that it has to be that way. I feel like there's also a really sort of new era of landlordship as well that I think, you both really talk about, where a lot of the old landlords are moving away, and there is opportunity to do things differently. There is opportunity to actually say painting over the cracks is not okay. And you actually want to give your tenants a property that you would be happy to live in, So I think it's a real opportunity for people that are looking to do property differently to actually step in the ring.
Yeah, I would definitely say, just to add on, like follow on from that, I'd say I personally see soft girl as just a way to sustainably live life and do business
and not compromise your nervous system. I think for me, I always think of my nervous system and not working in a way that my body's going to give me a ton of signs that I need to slow down.
Yeah, it's having more mindful. Being more mindful of how you work. That's how I see soft girl, instead of just going through the motions. Because I think like the way that business has always been has neglected your nervous system throughout. And as women in business, particularly, obviously I'm generalizing because we are like, I can only talk from my own experience, that we are so now personally in flow of how we do business when we are going through our monthly cycles, which we neglected and that's not being soft girl. That's how I see it. Being soft girl is like really honing, I can never say the word, honing into inwards of how your body is when you are working. And that if that means more rest, I struggle with it personally when you're like, let's go for a walk, and I've got like
actually even today I was like, let's do some yoga before we start, and Ruth's like, there's a crack in the wall there, I need to fix that. Like, no, we're just doing yoga now.
But like, it's being present, isn't it? It's just being present. I think especially in business, we can consistently keep looking, sorry, that's the word, looking into the future and like never living in the present. And soft girl is about, I'd say, being more present with where you are in your business or your life, your goals, and not only looking at the goals that are in 5-10 years time. And I am so guilty of living in the future that soft girl really forces presence.
Yeah, 100%. It forces you to be present. And I think one of the big things I'm always talking to my clients about is that sometimes you've got to slow down so you can speed up. And then I think the other thing is that, with property, there's always going to be another property. Like if you don't make that call to do the viewing, right, there's always, if somebody can always wait to receive an email most of the time, like nothing is ever that urgent. And I think, sometimes it's almost, speaking to that part of yourself that's still craving like this productivity, and actually saying, no, I need to honor this. Like it would be much better for my nervous system to have a nap now. And then I think the other piece for me is and then I was just going to say the other piece for me is also being able to trust that what is meant for you will not pass you by. So regardless of whether you see that property today or tomorrow, or whether or not you make that phone call or put your offer in slightly later, if that property is meant for you, it won't matter because it's already for you. And anything that isn't for you, maybe that's, you've got out of something else. I'm a big believer in sort of, rejection is redirection, sometimes.
Before we continue, here's a quick thought. Ever feel like there's just never enough time to focus on what really matters in your business? You don't have to do it all alone. As they say, a great team makes everything easier. That's why we've partnered with the Freedom Geek. Their talented Filipino VAs help us with tasks like admin and podcast editing, just like for this episode, giving us the freedom to focus on what really moves the needle. If you're looking to reclaim your time and to work smarter, then check out the Freedom Geek. All the details are in the show notes. Now let's get back to our conversation.
I feel like sometimes it's such a contradiction though when it comes to business, because very much from when we first started, it was like, you just need to get in and keep going. until like you need to get, because it's a numbers game. And like, yes, okay, you can't lie, it is, I don't like saying it, but it is a bit of a numbers game. But it's, if you're not doing absolutely everything to get that deal, then are you a failure for like leaving it to the next day? You know, like, oh, but your nervous system is crushed because you've continued to try and keep pursuing a deal that maybe isn't working. So where's like the, I feel like Soft Girl really challenges that so much.
So we forced things to work.
Yeah.
And that backfires when you force something to work because it's just not meant for you, or it's just going to show you it's not meant for you later in a really severe way.
Yeah, and which it did, until it came to the wake-up call and we thought, oh wow, the things that really do flow in and it feels easy, is it allowed to feel easy? Is like this how it's supposed to feel? You feel like, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough for this to feel so
like,
easy?
why am I this relaxed?
Yeah, like
surely that means I'm supposed to do
something harder.
More.
Yeah, like, oh, okay, if I relax here, then maybe I need to like run up a hill in really high speed to just that's a terrible example, but I'm just saying that you've got to, I feel like sometimes I battle with, if something feels too easy, you've got to like outweigh it with something else to make it hard. But then isn't that just like a state of trying to punish yourself because of how you've lived your life, thinking that there needs to be some sort of balance, but actually that doesn't exist? What's your thoughts about that?
So loaded.
That's so loaded, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like with these kind of things, it's always worth trying to understand, you know, where that comes from. You know, where does that sort of pursuit for things of being hard to come from? And that part of you that almost wakes up when you know, things are being easy, you know, like, what does that part of you, like, if we think about ourselves as a whole person, but with lots of different parts. So, you know, you'll have the part of you that was a little girl, you'll have the part of you that, you know, was burnt out. And if we think about that part of you that feels fear that things are being easy because it needs to be hard, like, what does that part need? Like, what is it looking for? And, you know, does it require validation? Does it need speaking to? You know, could it be saying something like, I really hear you. I really understand where you're coming from, because that was a survival pattern that kept us safe for so long and allowed us to move forward with our lives. And I'm doing things differently now. And it's no longer the case that things need to be hard.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of getting used to.
Yeah.
Because only the last year for us, at least, personally, we've tweaked everything to make it just simple,
but like, obviously, no, it's not always easy. Like, business isn't just plain sailing, but trying to battle, like, making sure that we really do not fall back into you know, ending the day completely like a zombie is not the goal. And we thought that was the only way that you showed that you worked really hard. Even if you delegated or outsourced tasks, even if we did that, we always found some sort of way to get back to that state. And it's reminding, oh, don't get to that state, because, like you said, like, why have a pep talk? Why are you trying to force yourself back into that state that doesn't actually serve your nervous system? And I wonder if that's just like a lifetime of having to have words with yourself.
Yeah, it's almost like a form of self-sabotage in a way, because you know what's good for you, but this old pattern is sort of creeping in. I do feel like healing is lifelong. Like, I'm sorry to say it, but I am somebody that believes that healing is lifelong, and some of these parts of ourselves or patterns, you know, will be around and will need talking to. But I do feel like we are able to start rewiring our nervous system and create different neural pathways. So obviously, the more that you have this talk and the more that you choose softness as safety rather than hardness as safety, the easier it will become over time. Because our brain is negatively wired. So it's always going to choose, you know, that neural pathway it's always gone for, because it takes time for that new neural pathway of safety being soft to build. So, you're definitely not alone. And I think also there can be exceptions as well. I think the question that I like is sort of, what allows you to breathe deeper? Like, if there are loads of offers on the table and it will take you 20 minutes to pull up your numbers and put an offer in, are you going to sleep better that night? Are you actually going to bring more safety to your body as opposed to forcing yourself to leave it to the next day? And I think it's more about making those decisions sort of quite intuitively, like asking yourself, what feels right in this moment? Like, obviously, I know my hustle mode part will be happy if I go and do this. But, this part of me that is choosing softness now, what is going to feel more comfortable for them? And actually almost checking in with your nervous system as you do that.
What's funny is that you mentioned about how bubble baths are not a form of self-care, and that it would be the only thing I think would be my self-care. And you know what I'd be doing in the bubble bath? I'd be researching on Zoopla. Like, I was supposed to be relaxing, and I'm just like, productivity. I just couldn't help myself. And it took me a time to notice that I was doing that. And I'd even be on the phone to you.
Yeah, I found a good one.
And I'm supposed to, my husband's run me a lovely bubble bath to like relax and unwind from the day. I'm on the phone to Becky, like talking about business, and I'm going, what's wrong with me? I can't help myself. So I just love that you are really spreading this message that it does not, like, get off the phone. Don't be on your phone in the bath.
Your property is meant to support your lifestyle. That includes having a bubble bath in peace.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you for sharing that with me. I mean, I think, it is so hard. Like, it is, again, the soft life girl can be hard to maintain sometimes, when these sorts of things happen. But, it's a journey. It's a journey. And, I always notice with myself because, I also struggled with this, particularly at the beginning, with being able to rest and being able to slow down, because similarly, I'd been hardwired for, speed being safety. And I actually realized sometimes in my business, for example, like if I went and edited a video that I just recorded a yoga session really quickly or something like that, like I would feel exhausted and then I wouldn't rest and, I would not feel great about it. But sometimes if I was like, I'm going to go and have a nap, or I'm actually going to go and listen to a podcast or whatever it is that kind of brings some more safety into the body, I'd go and have a nap and then I'd get a sail through and stuff like that. So I think also there's a lot to be said for leaning into the feminine as well, like not only the cycle, but also leaning into that feminine of receiving as well, because whilst you might miss out on that property that you didn't put an offer in, you never know the next day, because you trusted and surrendered without going too woo on you, like that something else came through the next day that was meant for you and you didn't need to do any work for it.
Yeah. I think we're always rushing, aren't we? We're just rushing for the next thing, or like trying to climb to the next thing. And then we forget that, like you said, surrendering and just trusting that the universe will bring us what we need. But it's so hard when we live in a world where not everyone, but like a lot of what's influenced to us of what success is striving for so much more, and you're not going to achieve it if you don't slow down a little bit to be able to. But slowing down actually allows you to see it.
Yeah, it often brings clarity. And I think sometimes on those hard days when you do feel like I can't really take the slow lane today, even though I need to, it's like, how can I slow down just 1%? I say this to my clients, just see if you can slow down 1%. Just see if you can do that. Because I think for me, it's also about like small sustainable changes and small steps, as opposed to kind of setting yourself up for failure. So if you can't take, a long walk in the sunshine or an hour-long bubble bath with a podcast or whatever, can you go and lie down and be horizontal and put on a guided meditation on Insight Timer for 5 minutes? Like, is that doable?
It should be doable.
I agree with that, because because I'm a mum as well. I think we've got kids similar age, but I remember I used to beat myself out so much for not being able to go to the gym, or like I couldn't work out the same way I used to when I went to the gym. I quit the gym and I would work out from home, and I used to think I need to do a certain amount of time at the gym to make it like productive. Oh, the speed. And now I've really lent into, okay, if I can do 15, 20 minutes, it's taken so much pressure off of feeling, and it's consistency, isn't it? The key is, even if it's like you said, 1 minute, it makes you feel so much better for just being consistent that you did the 1 minute, because eventually it will monopolize. Is that what the word? Monopolize? No.
Compound.
Compound.
Compound. That's it. Compound. Eventually, when you will have more time back, but maybe it's not in this season of your life, and that's okay. And that was a lot of pressure personally on myself for not being able to work or work out like I didn't have a child. And that's like a whole brain mess up.
Yeah, no, I think we are told that we can do it all, and maybe we can, but at the expense of what? At the expense of our nervous system, at the expense of our health,
Yeah, I get eczema when I'm stressed. And I got shingles once, and I remember going to the doctor, and the doctor was like, "You're too young to be getting shingles." I was like, it's all because of stress. It's insane. But I think when you are in tune with your body and you can see, like, listen to yourself, it's trying to tell you something. Maybe you do need to be horizontal and have your siesta now. Like, go do it, because there are
And don't feel
signs.
guilty. And don't feel guilty about it. That's the hardest part, is feeling guilty that you're not doing enough.
Guilt is the worst for me. I get really bad guilt.
So do you help people with your coaching on how to relieve the guilt?
Yeah, actually, this came up with a client just last week. Actually, they were trying to sort of find ways of sort of prioritizing their own joy without guilt. And sometimes, at the moment, I'm not offering therapy; it is coaching, but it can be helpful to sort of understand, as I was saying earlier, where this comes from. And what does that part need? And then really sort of trying to understand the limiting beliefs that are kind of holding you back. So, for example, like if you believe, I am not worthy of my own joy, and that might come from, I don't know, something somebody said when you were little, or, it might be in your environment or something like that, then maybe you can shift it. With like an affirming belief. And I'm not a big fan of, affirmations being used for the sake of it, because I really feel like you have to believe them. But, how can you actually start to embody that new belief by sort of almost unpacking and, working through the processing of what may have gone on. So yeah, I do work with my clients on it, and I also work on myself. My coaching is also kind of a product of sort of, my own experiences and my own story, and how, valuable I found it to have a coach myself.
I love that. This new wave of property investors is just creating like what we've always said, that property is just like a financial thing in the back that is a tool that helps you serve the world in your best form, and that's exactly what you're doing. And I love to see it. And you're remote and you can do it anywhere, and your son gets to have like a really vibrant childhood being split between places. So it's beautiful what you're making, Abbie. I wish we had the insight sooner.
Oh, thank you. Everything happens for a reason. Why it's all in its own time. As you were saying earlier, like the property journey that you had, it brought you so much and actually led to the creation of, the Honest Property community and this podcast and everything. So I'm a real believer in that, everything happens for a reason. Again, not from like a toxic positivity side of things, but more from one of the questions I ask a lot is sort of, I used to be this person that would be like, why is this happening for me? No, sorry, why is this happening to me? And then it was a real change to be like, how is this happening for me? And I think when you can kind of make meaning from your story, it makes it so much easier as well.
Yeah. And I just also love your message about being in the slow lane. Slow doesn't mean bad. It means like you can make a quality business. You can make your quality relationships with your tenants, or I like that you used the word associates actually. I never thought to use the word associate, but yeah, your associates, the people that you work with. And when you have a more sustainable and like quality business, that's just gonna last longer. You're not gonna have to waste time fixing things as much.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. It's like playing the long game, isn't it? Like if you are getting into property and you literally hammer it out for a year, yes, you might have success. Yes, you might have properties quicker, but in the long term, that's not going to be sustainable. And I think that was one of the things that was key for me when I was setting up my property business. Like I want to set this up not only with my values in mind, but also with these systems already in place. At the moment, I am doing a lot of the work, but off the back of one of your podcasts, actually, I'm looking at maybe getting a VA with Freedom Geek because, you know, again, that feels very aligned with the soft life. And, you know, if I can free up more time of myself to also spend time, you know, in like on the business rather than doing all the nitty gritty, then all the better.
Yeah.
100%. We totally vouch for the Filipino virtual assistant with the Freedom Geek. A lot of property professionals use them. So, yeah, highly recommend. As well as giving back to our own community.
Yeah,
so it makes us very happy.
because we're half Filipino, but they are like, I think it's like knowing that you cannot do everything yourself, and it's okay. Like that you know, we're communities are meant to be there as a community to be able to build where you lack, or you know, that's the whole point of delegation. If you want to, you know, grow sustainably, we're not advocating for like the like unsustainable growth. It's now very much
I think it's smart delegation. Like we delegated and didn't
but added more work onto a plate.
It was we didn't listen to our gut with certain delegations that it backfired. So like even if you're delegating, make sure you are like matching up with the right people, go through a thorough vetting process with whoever you're matching up with, and listen to your heart and your gut as well as your noggin, because it all is connected.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no people pleasing, and also sort of again, for me, I think it will be also thinking about, you know, that recovering perfectionist in me. You know, what are they unwilling to let go of and why?
Yeah. And I think there's solutions for everything. Like you found the solution for making your property, but doing everything you do virtual, online, and from a different country. And I think one little tip that I would like to share that Ruth and I encountered was when there isn't enough options for a solution just yet, and the only solution for an option doesn't feel quite right, then maybe you're not like this you're not ready, it's not ready for like not, don't force yourself to like just take the only option available because that's the only one, if that makes sense. Wait until like the solution to your issue is like one that's actually going to actually make you feel good, instead of like correct, because for us it just led to more correcting later on.
Or you're just like slotting yourself into boxes, and then if none of that works, then create it yourself.
Yeah. No, I love that. That feels like a really important insight. Again, it's sort of speaking to the not forcing it, you know, like don't force this to work. If it doesn't work, you know, trust that something else will come along later when the time is right.
You said that way, I made that way more long-winded than it needed to be. Yeah, that's exactly what I meant to say.
I mean, also to add, it was a big reason why we started the nature networking events, is because we didn't see people like us and what we valued, and so we thought, if it doesn't exist, create it yourself. So that's you know, and if this is for anyone listening, that if you see there's a gap, you can't have the confidence to make it yourself, because there's going to be other people that are exactly like you that
looking for that
are looking for that same thing. And it's just putting yourself out there and going, yeah, actually I can make something that that can bring community together, that are also or they need that need met too.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's all about showing up like authentically as well. Like one of the sort of recent, I guess, sort of not an identity crisis, but one of the recent things that I had to work on was like, oh God, I'm going into property business and I'm also in wellness. Like, how is this going to match up? And I had to do quite a lot of work on myself to kind of be like, no, this is all of me. And actually I gained a lot of insights about sort of embracing all parts of you. Because, like we can be both, like we can be all the things, like we are unique individuals. Like it doesn't have to look one way just because, most property investors are a middle-aged white man in the UK. Like that doesn't mean that we don't have a place. And actually the more that we can speak authentically and share our story, the more people that will actually think about maybe joining us on that journey, or actually feel called to embrace all parts of themselves too.
Yeah. Oh, well, that makes me so happy, because I feel like we're all on the same mission. Just showing up for the versions of us that needed it when they're out there. So where can people find you, Abbie? What are your offerings at the moment? Do you want to share with the audience, and then we can
Yeah, thank you. So mostly I'm over on Instagram. I do also have a website, which is www.abbieshealingcorner.com, which I'm sure you'll put in the show notes. And then I'm Abbie's Healing Corner on Instagram, and then Legacy Property Collective for my property side of things on Instagram too. And then in terms of my offerings, in terms of the coaching, I offer one-off sessions. I offer a 3-month coaching container and a 6-month coaching container. And, I work with all walks of people, but at the moment my focus is really on supporting individuals to redesign a life on their own terms after chronic illness and burnout. So again, it's sort of really drawing on my own experience to sort of support people in this transition. I don't know how much you know about the wellness or healing space, or listeners how much they know, but there's a lot of work that goes into healing and nervous system regulation. And then what happens is that because people aren't supported in sort of transitioning back into normal life, they end up trying to go back to their old life, but that old life doesn't fit them anymore. Like that old life doesn't serve them anymore. So a big piece of the work that I'm doing is actually to support people in that transition so they can actually start living a life on their own terms that feels sustainable, that feels good for them, that nourishes them and lights them up, and sort of allows them to walk away from all the things that aren't serving them anymore.
I love that. Yes, Abbie. You're just like showing up to just do a whole load of good in the world, and I love it.
Thank you. As are you both.
Thank
you so much. We do have one last question, actually, which we love asking our guests recently. And it could be about absolutely anything. It could be about property. It could be about wellness. It could be about living, working remotely. It could be family, anything. And the question is, basically, it's a fill the blank question. And the question is, honestly, the biggest thing I've learned is...
It's a really good question. The biggest thing I've learned is, I think, patience.
My goodness, yes.
Yes.
I feel you. Just patience with yourself, or just with others?
Just
everything. I think patience with everything. Patience with myself, patience with the journey, patience in motherhood, patience in becoming a mother, patience in healing. I mean, patience and trust are two of my really big life lessons. And I feel like, patience pays, patience is a virtue, blah, blah, blah. And it can also be really hard. But I think that's the biggest thing for me.
I love that. Yes. So simple, but so powerful. Thank you so much, Abbie. We're going to put all of Abbie's links and wherever you can find her. We're going to put it in the show notes. So yeah, once again, thank you, Abbie. I'm sure we will be connecting again very soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.